Hey everybody, welcome back in. And today is still the 9th of January 2020. And right now what I've got to do is finish the cable management on an earlier build that was started where I had Windows 10 installed, I had to activate it, I went ahead and did all that. And we had initially a bad fan and a cable that I broke on this, which I've already covered that repair. I broke the big motherboard cable when I had it on the counter, here on this counter, and it fell and hit the floor and the little clippy piece fell off, broke off. And so I could still plug the connectors in, but nothing was preventing them from falling out. Although it's a pretty tight fit, it probably would not have been an issue since this is a local machine. BeQuiet was very good on taking care of that. I mean, they had me a replacement cable within 2 or 3 days after this happened. It was very quick. So my thanks to BeQuiet for their responsiveness. And it wasn't even their fault. I'm the one who dropped the cable. I'm a bit surprised the little clip broke, but maybe it just hit the floor at the right angle. I don't know. So the main cable was already replaced, and then we had a flickering fan. It was the lights, the RGB lights were kind of flickering on one of the fans. And SilverStone was very quick on sending me a replacement fan. That was the lower fan here. And that's working perfectly now. So my thanks to both BeQuiet and SilverStone for sending me these products to review and evaluate. And I've been very impressed with how cold the CPU is running with that cooler. So I've requested another PF240 from SilverStone so I can put it on another build and see if it is also running as chilly. Because if so, that's the coldest I've ever seen a liquid cooler run a stock CPU. Very impressive. But we're running with a couple of many different components that I'm typically use and that I'm familiar with. This is an ASRock Phantom Gaming 7 motherboard, which is an unusual choice for me. The cooler from SilverStone. SilverStone has never done liquid cooling before. They have this cooler available in 3 sizes, the traditional 140, this 240, and then a 360. 240 is the most common. We've got the G.Skill RGB Pro RAM. This was left over from Franklin's build because the RAM got in the way of putting the cooler in. So I ended up trading RAM with Franklin for something lower profile that he could use that didn't have the RGB. You got to remember, when you add that RGB, you're not only paying more, but the RAM is physically taller and that could interfere with your cooler. And we couldn't even put a liquid cooler on it because the height of the case that we had selected, or Franklin had selected, the bottom of the radiator would hit the top of the RAM, and so it wouldn't seat. Anyway, that's a whole nother video series you can watch from about a year ago. But Franklin just reported into the chat a while back and said everything's running great on his computer, and he's very happy with it. The power supply here is the BeQuiet StraightPower 11. And the solid state drive, I forgot what we're running in this. I think did we put an Intel in this? I can't remember. But this RGB to me is acceptable. Like it's eye-catching, but it's not over the top Las Vegas tacky in your face kind of, you know, let's put lights on everything kind of a situation. And I do like the way that lights very gently switch colors. It's mesmerizing. It does nothing for PC performance or reliability. It adds more cost and more complexity, more cabling. And if that's what you want, well, then that's what you should have. It doesn't have to make sense. Sometimes people just want something because they want it, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that being said, the last thing I've got to do to this machine before it can be delivered to the customer is just figure out a nice way to clean up all these extra cables we have because it is RGB. And you can see the way some cables are overlapped. It kind of bothers me. So we'll run it behind here like this. And that's sort of the first step before we do any tying down or zip tying of any of these cables. Sometimes there's a more efficient way to run the cables. For example, the RGB is like Christmas tree lights at this point. We've sort of gone back in time with connecting one to another, and then it may make more sense to connect 2 items closer together before going to a further item versus connecting this over here and then from over here back over to there. So there's a little bit of experimentation, if you like, or just trying different things to see what works for you and what your preferences are. That's why I generally don't make videos on cable management. There's no one rule to follow. And so when it comes to these cables, I'm kind of thinking of, I don't know, I got to figure out how I want to fix that. And then I've got a bunch of slack here that's part of the pump. And so probably the best thing to do when it comes to the RGB cables is to probably disconnect them and start over just to figure out what's going to look the best as far as the cable management goes. Because when I plugged these RGB cables in, I was in a hurry. I wanted to see if there's a fan going to work, what's it look like. I was anxious, and I figured I'll cable management later. Well, now is later, and it's that time, and I just might be better off starting fresh than working with what I've set myself up with here. So I want to start by grabbing all the slack from the front, right? Because this is the part everybody's going to see. And I want to see what I can do to hide as much of this as possible. Now, like this cable here, I've got a couple choices when it comes to dealing with the main pump cable. And the instinct is like, well, I can just grab a zip tie and I can take up the slack, but it's still kind of ugly. Another way around this could be to unplug it and run it out through the back and then zip tie the slack on this side so that there's just a little tail of it that can go down inside and plug in. In fact, let me try that and see what it's going to look like. And I'm just going to handle this one cable at a time. Don't be overwhelmed by the number of cables you've got to work with. Just deal with one cable at a time. And before you know it, you'll be all done. You'll be out of cables. So let me take a quick look at what this is going to look like if we do it like this. Let's see. Maybe it'd be better to go this way. No. Maybe like this. Trying to anticipate how much slack I'm going to need to feed this back in, and we'll just keep the rest of it hidden out here where nobody can see it. Oops. There it is. I almost tightened that around just the bare cable without it being folded. That would have been a waste. Wouldn't be the first time. Certainly won't be the last. Let's see how we're doing in the chat room. Paul 1961 contributed 10 Canadian dollars. He says, hey, bud, have a couple of Cokes. Hey, thank you, Paul. Brendan Looney contributed £2. Thank you, Brendan. And Daniel Skinner, $2. So thanks for 3 videos in one day. Chester Hughes contributed $3, and Hugh Wong has contributed $3.07. Boomhour 100's contributed $2. He says, hello, Carey. I hope all is well. Keep it up. And Madi is still joining us here with a contribution of $2. Thank you, guys. Thank you for supporting the channel. So anyway, let's see if I can get this flipped back inside. Oh yeah, that should be super easy. I'm going to grab my glasses and my flashlight because, you know, working in the dark and being blind are kind of the same thing. So I should be used to it by now. So that puts the cable there, and I should be able to once again pull that slack back. Pull that slack back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. Don't need to be coy, Roy. Just listen to me. All right, that's good right there for now. You know what else I can do? There is a little wire management bridge right here. And I can grab another nylon zip tie and I can just tie that up so it won't fall back in there during transportation and movement of the computer, and it'll keep it tucked away and keep, because remember there's a window on the other side of this case, and now we'll see less of that cable because of that. Now there's one cable, right? All that is taken care of one cable, but that's one less that I have to do later. So looking at, so I mentioned how RGB plugs into RGB. And what I can see is the RGB feed coming off the motherboard. It goes to one fan, and then it connects to the pump. And there should be one, is there one more? I gotta think about this for a minute. There's fan number 1. Plugging into the board. Fan number 2 should be, where's fan number 2? I'm seeing some cables interwoven here, so I want to take care of that. Pull this apart, move it over here. Now, sometimes what can help with cable management is if you're dealing with a lot of little cables like this, especially if you're working with RGB, is to go ahead and waste a couple of your nylon zip ties, or you can, for this, we can just use one of these wire ties because we just want to temporarily tie these up, get them out of our way so they don't get tangled in any other of our cables. We don't have to sit there and keep rerouting them or keep unweaving them, if you will. So, a wire tie is good for temporarily holding the cable in place. And I can see BeQuiet has used a wire tie right here that's holding these cables together. We want to remove all the wire ties before we put the panels back on. So I'll keep this as a potential cable management tool in a similar fashion to hold the cables for me while I'm trying to figure out how I want to route everything. See, like this is an extra cable to feed the next fan or whatever else is RGB. So no matter what, you should always have an extra one because they're serialized. One plugs into another, plugs into another. It gives one, it takes one, it gives one. So you're always going to end up with one extra. And so we can wire tie that just to keep it out of the way. And all these little things, like I can even bring that up all the way up. Oops, did I unplug that? What did I just do? Oh, I see what I did. All these little things, like this, add up to make it look good, right? Each individual thing by itself doesn't seem like we've accomplished much. So right there, we've kind of got these bundled up temporarily. This is permanently fixed, and that's permanently fixed. And slowly but surely, we're going to work our way through all these cables, just following that methodology. Take your time and think about the proper way to do it the first time so you don't have to go back and redo it anytime, cut the wire ties and reroute the cable. But that's okay if you have to, that's okay. Randy Harris has contributed $14.99. He says, been gone for a while. Good to be back. Hey, welcome back, Randy. Let's take a look at, let me check something here real quick, guys. Hang in there for a minute. How rude it never stops. Getting back to this, as I take a look at the way these cables are routed, there may be a more efficient means to have these three things all connected together. And I'm having a hard time right now visualizing the alternatives. So my choice is to continue to work with what I have or to change it. And I don't like, again, I don't like how that one cable goes inside of the other cable. And I also don't like how easily these just fall out. There's not a whole lot to hold them together. So your cable management needs to be done in a way that won't be so tight as to pull those connectors apart when the computer is moved. If anything, you can sort of bend the cables in opposite ways like this and then wire tie it over the connector so the connector is more likely to stay connected than fall apart, or not fall apart, but disconnect is what I'm trying to say. You can see the main cables for the USB 3 and the front port audio and the front port switches. They're already mostly wired from the factory just the way we need them. And that's one of the pains in the butt about RGB is it's adding more cable management. And of all the cables to manage, these are going to require more zip ties than the actual cables that get work done. So listen to me complain. Told you I was the best at it. And fans. Okay, so, whoops, sorry, Lyle. Sorry, buddy. Smack your butt. So looking at this, trying to visualize where or how I want to route these cables. So once again, I want to get this out of the way. And you can see it just keeps dropping and falling. And that's where these little wire ties come in handy to just temporarily, see it just disconnected again. To just temporarily get these cables out of our way so we can focus on easier cables, ones that I can say, okay, I definitely want that over there. So I will just run this wire tie right up through here in this lid. And we'll go right up there. Now remember, I'm just doing this to get it out of my way for right now. This is not how the customer is going to get it. No worries there. Oh, did you see the guy's cable management? He tied the cables to the outside of the case. All right. That should help me a little bit anyway. I can go ahead and I can wire tie this motherboard power cable right along those edges and get that one out of my way right now. So anything that I can see easy, I want to get out of the way. And then a lot of these little dilemmas solve themselves. It sort of leaves you no other route. Ire Wolfman has contributed €2. Could you do a Sharkoon Revision 200 build? There's no reviews. I don't believe Sharkoon is sold in the United States. Furthermore, I don't have any sponsors on this channel. The viewers are what make these videos possible through their contributions and support. So if you want to see something specific, it's best to order it and have me build it for you. And yes, I'm getting a lot of compliments on my shirt today. I guess I should wear it more often. You know what I never get compliments on? When I take it off. Thanks for putting that vision in our heads, Carey. No problem. I'll be here all week. Tip your waiters and waitresses. Try the lobster. Speaking of which, I need to get Mitch over here. Which Mitch? You know. So I'm going to make sure that the slack is taken up on this cable, so we're going to hide it as much as possible. So I'm going to pull down on the cable and then tighten up the zip tie to help keep it in that position. You don't want these cables, again, too taut or they may pull right out of the connectors. And then trying to plug it back in when you have no slack on the cable is a royal pain in the butt. And then you got to sit there and cut away all your other zip ties until you have enough slack, plug it back in, and then redo your cable management again. So you do want a little bit of play in there. Topless. Mitch Hammond. Why is Mitch not a moderator here? I know Mitch in real life. Let's fix that, Mitch. All right, that's a different Mitch, ladies and gentlemen. There's more than one. Life was full of Mitches. Now, where was I? I was putting these back on. There's two more wire bridges, wire management areas here. I think what I can do is just put one horizontally here. I like how BeQuiet gives me so many of these. We'll put that right here. Look at that. So now I don't have to put there's a wire management bridge here and one here, but that would be redundant at this point. That's interesting. I don't want to keep it like that. I guess that's okay. I'll figure that out. So that's part of the decision making when you're doing your cable management is which cables do you want to be over other cables. In some cases, you have no choice but to route the cables overlapping each other. And so I don't want to have to take half the cables out to change the power supply, right? Or if I'm going to change a component out, I want to be able to change it out rather quickly without having to undo all my cable management. I want to minimize that as much as possible. So I'm realizing now I can lift this up a bit and we can put it up on this wire bridge right up here, this wire management bridge, and that clears it from this area down here where we have our RGB cables and our front port audio cable. And then I realized just now that I have not secured this little hard drive cage. So let me get my driver and tighten that back up. We've got 503 people watching. I'm kind of curious throughout the day where people are watching me from, because it may be the morning where you live and are watching me from, or are you staying up late with me? Well, for me, it's only 7:30 in the evening. For you, what time is it? Where are you? Give it a shout out in the chat. Let me know. Bonnie Scotland says, Dave Murray, it's 2:26 in the morning. But what he's not telling you is it's actually 2023 there. Bordura Catalan, of course, joins us from Michigan. I met up with Bordura at Buddy's Pizza when I was out there in Michigan. Now, in Michigan, it's 2 hours ahead. It's going to be 9:30 at night there. And look at all my Michigan peeps joining. That makes me happy. 2:27 in the morning in Wales, 3:27 in the morning in Sweden, 1:26 in the afternoon in Sydney, Australia, 4:30 in the morning in Athens, Greece, 9:30 in Toronto, Canada, and 9:30 a.m., 12 hours later in, I can't say it, we'll just call it Thailand. 12:30 in Brisbane, Australia. Looks like 12:30 in the afternoon. Looking at some past comments I've missed. Okay, keeping it professional, folks. think I am caught up. Glenn Davies contributed $5 Australian. He says, I did not realize that seeing that Windows logo during boot up on Windows 10 was an indication that I did not install Windows in UEFI mode. Should I reinstall? There are some advantages to UEFI. Maybe Google it and see what the difference is and determine if that's worth it to you to do a reinstall. My attitude is you should always do it right. I'm not exactly sure what happened 4 years ago when Windows 7 went on that machine that UEFI was not utilized, but it wasn't really as noticeable then as it is now. It's not worth taking that other computer from the previous video where we had Windows 10 that was an upgrade from Windows 7 and UEFI was not enabled on it. But that's okay. It's a very fast system. But again, there are other reasons why you might want to consider it. Paul, 1961, contributed 10 Canadian dollars. Did I say that already? He says, hey, bud, have a couple of Cokes. Thanks, Paul. Things get a little crazy here, and I can't remember what I've done and what I haven't done. Dave Murray says he's in Scotland there. He's heading out for a sunrise photo right now. Well, that's my sun. I just sent it your way. Let me know when you receive it. I put a tracking number on it. Wallace Benaway's contributed $20. He goes, hello from another 30-year IT veteran. Oh, we got another glutton for punishment here. Let's make sure you're a moderator and put you in charge. If you've been tortured that long, then you can handle this easy. Welcome in. It's always good to have not only people to educate, but also peers to help keep me honest. Nothing wrong with that. All right, so I was looking at this. This is where I was, and I still have this weird, I don't like this audio cable. You see how it's getting wrapped around? Again, when I was building it, that wasn't my main concern. My main concern was trying to think ahead to avoid this, but apparently I didn't do that. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I'm just trying to think if I go under it, if the cabling is going to look cleaner. I think it will. So I'm just going to unplug it. This is the front port audio header, or front port audio umbilical cord. And I'm just going to pull that and then run it outside of this cable and put it right back in again. It's a little tedious, but this is, how often are you going to do it, right? You build your computer. How often are you going to build one? So that's why I say slow down, take your time. And if you really do it well, you're going to want to show it off to everybody, and that's its own reward. But be careful, because those people might ask you to build a computer, and you'll be like, all right, I'll build one for you. Yeah, sure, I'd love it. That'll be a lot of fun. And then somebody else wants you to build one, and then you're like, I should make a little YouTube video on this. And before you know it, you've worked since noon without any food and enduring criticism from a YouTube channel. But it beats digging ditches. Contributions just come in from Stealth Mode, contributed $5 and says, to another amazing year. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Stealth Mode. Randy Reed says, hi, Carey, how are you? I am busier than a one-legged cat trying to bury a turd on a frozen pond. How are you? Oh, this cabling. So these big pipes here for the liquid cooler, there's nothing I can do about that. We've got the rear case fan, and I'm sort of looking if there's any way I can route that a little differently. The fan header's smack dab in the middle of the board, but that's not the only header I can use. I could, if I want to be creative and really go out of my way, I've got a fan header right here at the very bottom. And so even though it makes sense to go the shortest route, because that's so visible in this build, and this build is only running onboard graphics. We're not going to put a discrete graphics card. So this area is going to be very open invisible. And I would like to not have a cable right smack dab in the middle. That looks terrible. So as much as I complain about RGB, when you have a case window, even without RGB, this becomes even more important to make sure your cabling looks nice. I mean, you could make it look like hell back here. This is a mullet all day long. Business in the front and party in the back. That's your mullet cabling. So that's my name for it. So what I was thinking is I can take this fan cable from this rear case fan and run it right down that same hole. I just have the audio cable and the RGB. Yeah, so we can take that and pull that straight out, right through here, and then turn around and bring it right up. And I think, see, I pulled down on that cable. I think I just felt it become unplugged. Well, it unplugged somewhere. I felt it. Where did it unplug from? Oh, yeah, probably right there, Carey. I felt all the tension on the cable go away. So those connectors kind of suck. They should have some sort of a locking mechanism on there. So anyway, I'm going to bring this fan cable, and I can bring it right there, place it on the fan header here. Then it's just a question of, I was just trying to see if I had enough slack that I could bring it up and then all the way down the length of the board, but that's going to require more cable than I have. So the best I can do with this cable, it looks like, is to pull the slack I've got now. Well, I wish there was something more I could do. Something I could do that I never do is take this bottom screw out from the motherboard and then run the cable behind the motherboard. The problem with doing that, though, is the back of the motherboard where all the soldering points are. Those soldering points are very sharp. And if they, over time, through vibration or movement, punch through that cable, then it's going to create a short circuit. And that's too big of a price and too big of a risk just to make something look pretty. So I'm still looking at some alternative means to run this cable. If this was a gigabyte board, I'd have a connector up there and I could just bring the cable up and plug it in there, but there's no fan header on this ASRock board up there. Nor was there one on the Asus board we were working on earlier, so it does seem to be sort of a gigabyte thing to include a fan header in that corner. And it's really good at hiding the cable there because that's naturally where the rear case fan is going to be located. This is also a good location right here in the middle for a fan header, but unfortunately with the case window, as I mentioned, it also puts it right smack dab in the middle of the build. If this was a regular case with no case window, that would be perfect. And then we've got fan headers that run along the bottom here, and then sometimes we have them along the edge on the other side, which I am not seeing. So that's going to have to do, yeah. I wish there was something I could do here to hide this cable, just right here. And I don't think it's much to be seen. Once the window is placed on there, but I'm just thinking to myself, if I got real quiet, it's because I'm lost in thought. I guess that's going to have to do. It's still better than it was visually. And then we can grab a wire tie and tie that up. Viable Solutions says, good morning, Carey from Ireland, mate. Hey, Viable Solutions, welcome in. AV3, Stealth Mode, Paul Newman. And let's see who else we got in there. Wonder Woman, Edward Tallies, and Sherry McFarlane, Glenn Davies, and Zero Core, Google User, Daniel Skinner, Mike Larios. Carey, do you ever do wire harness cloth tape on these builds to keep case edges from cutting into the cable wires? Mike, the cases I use don't have sharp case edges. That's generally found on the lower end budget line of cases. I don't use them. Once I stop using those cases, I save the equivalent amount of money in Band-Aids and Bactine from all the cuts I was getting. I was making a Band-Aid corporation a lot of money by trying to save money and buying a cheap case. These BeQuiet cases, the metal is rolled, so there's no sharp edge. The same is true with Corsair. The same is true with Fantex, all the big name case manufacturers. It's those no-name brands that are 20 bucks. Those are the ones that'll cut you. They'll cut you good. They draw blood. You guys are hilarious today. 563 people watching live. Welcome in, everybody. Is this a Corsair case? What does the title of my video say? Anybody? Anybody? You're just clicking on video content? I don't know what I'm watching. This is a Pure Base 500, and the company is called BeQuiet. I've got some BeQuiet stickers. They're pretty generic, though. I was thinking I should give these away, but I really don't want to have to pay for the postage and take the time to address all the envelopes. But BeQuiet sent me a bunch of these. You think they're trying to tell me something? No, the folks over at BeQuiet have been wonderful to work with. And while I'm not a fan of all their products, and I've been pretty critical of some of their design, they've been very gracious at accepting my criticisms and continuing to offer me other product to review. And I think that says a lot about a company, that they don't say, oh, well, if you have a criticism, then we don't want to talk to you. Because to me, a company should want that. The company should say, hey, we value that information and we'll take that into consideration as we design other products. Likewise, when somebody is being kind to me, but critical on YouTube, like, hey, your lighting needs to be improved, or your microphone, or you talk too much. Whatever it is, if they say it nicely, that helps me to make better content. But if they're just mean and nasty, and I try to not be mean and nasty when I do my product reviews. I do try to be fair, but I also don't want to hold back. I want to be able to say, this is really bothering me, or this is something that's not that important, but I'd rather have it this way. And likewise, it's nice when somebody can be equally critical if they want to be critical of me, to say it in the right way, say it's not terrible, but it could be better if you do that, maybe. But when people just are outright nasty, they just get blocked. And in the same way, if you're going to be reviewing a product and you're outright nasty to the manufacturer, then it makes sense for them to block you as well and not send you any more product. But the reality is, there are many manufacturers who, if they don't hear what they want to hear, no matter how gently you put it, they won't work with you anymore. And so I'm very happy to say that is not the behavior of SilverStone. That is not the behavior of BeQuiet. They genuinely appreciate, or at least they tell me they appreciate, the pros and the cons of when I evaluate their product. They don't pay me anything to do it. They often just send me the product, and that's all I'm getting. They sent me the case, and in exchange, I build in it, share my building experience. Would I buy it? Would I recommend it? If so, why or why not? And I like that they will continue to send me product, even though I'm not always gung-ho on some of their efforts. So that being said, I think that says a lot about a company, and I think that's something worth considering when making a purchase. What kind of company am I dealing with? Viable Solution says, do the BeQuiet cases include a lot of sound insulation? Yes. Not a lot, but certainly more. Most cases don't come with any. If we look at the side panels on this case, there's a foam pad on one side. Obviously on the side that has glass, you can't see through the glass if you put sound insulation material on it, right? But we're dealing with parts that are very quiet to begin with. This system with this liquid pump, the SilverStone PF240 cooler, we only have then this fan running in the back, these two fans up front, and then the fan in the power supply. BeQuiet also makes very good power supplies. This is their StraightPower 11, and on the upcoming AMD 3950X build, BeQuiet will send me a Pure Base 600 windowed case with a different model of power supply that they make, which gives me another opportunity to continue to evaluate their products in real world use case scenarios. I have no problem recommending the non-windowed version of this, which is sitting right back here. That's the same exact case, but it's solid panels on both sides. And that's great in a business environment or where you don't want to draw attention to your rig. It'll never look tacky, it'll never look old. It just looks like a computer. And there's something to be said about that, in my opinion. You don't have to be all flash. And in a business environment, you don't want glass panels, and you don't want liquid cooling, and you don't want overclocking. You want your employees to get work done and not bicker about whose computer's prettier, or how come her computer's red and my computer's black. That's not fair. Believe me, I've dealt with all this nonsense political stuff particularly happens in small businesses. Corporate America, generally everybody's got the same, unless you're a boss. If you're a boss, you generally get something a little better than everybody else. And then those people get your hand-me-downs when you upgrade, then oftentimes the equipment's moved downstream to the peasants. So it's just unnecessary, that whole thing that just distracts from getting work done. But yes, I can definitely tell you the Pure Base 500, that computer case over there, if I could not get my hands on a Corsair 200R, or if a customer said, do you have any alternative to the 200R that's similar but still a good business case that's built really well, that's choice number 2 for me right now. So I'm very pleased with it, very pleased. And I wouldn't know that if BeQuiet didn't send me the case. I don't know that I would have got on my own and risked it to try and find an alternative. And so the downside of the Pure Base 500, whether it's windowed or non-windowed, where you could see it as a plus side, is you've got no front bays, so there's no way to put an optical drive or a card reader. But it does have 2 USB ports up here, and you can always buy an external optical drive and an external USB card reader and just plug it in when you need it. And because those USB ports are up here on top, and the top is flat, you can just rest it right on top of the computer. So you don't have to worry about where you're going to find it. Because I've had that happen where an office says, yeah, you know what, we don't need the DVD drives. We'll just order 2 USB DVD drives, and then the 12 employees we have can share it as they need it. And nobody puts it back when they're done with it, and they can't find it. What are you going to do? Okay, so let me see. So we've taken care, I think, of everything inside, right? We've got that fan taken care of, or that cable from the fan is what I mean to say. We've got a couple of cables up here. What are these going to? Oh, so that's the fan splitter. Now, normally I don't recommend fan splitters. And the reason SilverStone included the fan splitter is they want both of these fans on the radiator to run at the same speed. I like the idea of plugging each fan into its own fan header so that the motherboard can speed one up or slow one down as needed, but that's going to look really weird. Remember, with RGB, we're dealing a lot with aesthetics. We want everything to look right. So we want those fans to be in sync, to run at the same speed. So in this case, using a fan splitter is ideal and recommended because they're not going to run full bore. Like if we just plug those fans into power straight 12 volts, they'll run full speed all the time, then it's too noisy. We want the fans to still be able to slow down and speed up as needed, but we want them to be in sync because it's visual. And so for that, the fan splitter is perfect. Okay, so let me take another look in here, debate whether or not I want to wire tie anything or zip tie anything while I'm in here. I guess I could put a zip tie on the fan splitter right up here at the top, just to make it look more like it's one thick cable than two that are, you know what I mean, by keeping them together. Just be a nicer look. And that's at the top where probably nobody's going to see it anyway. Typically these computers, most places, they go on a floor, so the angle at which you're going to be looking through the glass makes it highly unlikely you're going to be looking anywhere above this area. But I still want to do my best, you know, in the sense that I want it to look good from any angle, or as good as I can make it look. They haven't come out with wireless wires yet, so until then, better get used to managing some cables. Just waiting for those wireless wires. I'm sure they're going to come out any day now. This is interesting. Looks like we can take this cable and run it right up through this loop. That looks good. Should be a way to tighten this down a little bit. Here we go. Let's open that up and let's put this other one in there. Come on. Cooperate. Resistance is futile. It's a little better. I think we can put the other right in there. Like so. There we go. Now, for the most part, if I didn't have RGB, I would be done. But I do have RGB and I'm not done. So there you go. I'm thinking I could run this cable along this way rather than running it down, knowing nobody's going to see anything from this point down because that's where the shroud is. It's going to cover the power supply, and we can hide a bunch of cables down inside, but it does make it harder to work on in the future. So if I disconnect this and I disconnect, where does this one go? Yeah, let's take that off. So let me think about this now. What if I took a completely different approach? So now I can remove this wire tie that was holding this out of my way and was making it easier for me to manage the other cables. Since those other cables are now managed, I no longer require that. And now let me take a look and see if anything's a more logical approach. I think it's safe to say that plugging these two fan RGBs together would be ideal since they're so close together, and that will get rid of a bulk of our cabling just right there. And then these could just be wrapped up like this. I guess I need my wire tie again. Having a hard time visualizing how this is going to work. So let's hold that off right there. That's just power for the fan, so that's fine. And then basically we need to run a cable to the front header of the RGB on the bottom of the board here, and then to one of these two cables remaining. So will this cable be long enough to do either of those two things? I got to cut that zip tie off and find out. Be careful when you cut your zip tie off. It's super easy to cut into the cable, and then that would be bad. So if I run this cable straight down the back, we can even tuck it in right behind here. Wait a minute, has it got to be that end? It's got to be female, can't be male. That's not long enough, it's not going to reach. That idea is not going to work. But we can go this way. We can take this end, we can run it underneath here, take both sides, let's come around here, and then we can plug one end into here. Let me undo this. We'll take the top fan, and plug it in to the water block. Remember, this is just RGB lighting we're dealing with. So now the water block's covered. Then we can take thinking out loud. So in theory, I think we don't need that other cable. And we can go from here, we can plug the other fan in. Well, maybe not. And then this part can go onto the motherboard. I think that's going to make the most logical sense. And that'll go right there, right next to the audio connector. And I think that's going to be our most realistic, best case scenario there. And so that remaining connector is if you want to feed yet another RGB light. That's what that spare one is for. And that'll be the spare one coming off the water block, and then all the ones on the fans are being used. But it does create a long cable that's got a bit to get tied up. So again, I want to just sort of visualize what this is going to look like. Let's see if we bring it in here. That is messy. Right there. I think that's going to pretty much be our bundle for the RGB. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put all the connectors down into the bundle so that they're not getting pulled on either side. So by making sure that all those connectors are right next to each other and that there's slack on each side, then I just tie this little bundle down. And then that's going to leave this little bit of slack here, which I can, again, this is an area nobody's going to see, but I can go ahead and tie that up right there, tie that one up right there, replace that wire tie. We're almost done. It's not too bad. I just have to find what I did with my zip ties. I guess I left them in the office. And Marty has contributed $10, and he's saying good night. A lot of people are, what's the matter, guys? Can't hack it? Let's go. Got work to do. Sleep can wait. There's plenty of time for sleep when you're dead. Separate the men from the boys here. I'm just teasing. Glenn Davies contributed $5 He says, Professor Frink on The Simpsons defines nerd as not even remotely dorky. Just thought I'd add this valuable information. All right, well, if Professor Frink says it, you know it's true. Cliven. Okay, so I'm an hour into this broadcast and I'm still dealing with cable management. But again, it's the complexity of all those added RGB cables and routing them in a way that makes sense, where they're not going to fall out. And I find this process much more pleasant having a pair of headphones in and listening to some music, because it's not the toughest brain work, you know? It's a different part of the brain making something look good versus making something work. Sort of going the creative side versus the logical side, although logic does help in determining cable routing. Come on, Carey, you can wire tie that or zip tie that. I know you can do it. You can do it. There we go. It's coming together now. What I'm doing is I'm trying to get the cable completely flat on all where it's folded, because it reduces the thickness. Like if you allow the cable to twist and then you take a twisted cable and another twisted cable and you zip tie those together, it's fatter. If you make sure the cable's flat and then you fold it onto another, straighten it out so it's flat, you get a nice thin, much thinner bundle when you're done. And it helps to have OCD to make sure it's all aligned just right. For something a customer will hopefully never even notice or look at. Like I said, I hope they're not pulling off this panel. I hope they're hiring me to do that. But they're not obligated, And then I can do the same thing with this bundle. In fact, watch this. We can take this right here. And I'm not going to worry, when you have this many cables and they're that, like these have sleeves and these don't, I'm not worried about making it all flat. So we'll just put that one on there. Let's grab some more of these. So these are little 4-inch cable ties. I get them at like Harbor Freight Tools, or sometimes you can get a good deal on Amazon or eBay, get a bulk of 1,000 of them. It'll last me a few months. And by cable tying on both sides of where this connector is, it's going to prevent any individual cable from getting pulled and disconnecting the plug from this socket that it's in. That looks good. And what I'm realizing is if I take this off, put that over here, because that was just on, remember, temporarily to hold it in position, I can just add it to this bundle here with these Velcro wire management ties, or whatever you want to call them, wire management straps, I guess, Velcro straps, and we can tuck it in. Look at this. Look how clean that's going to look. That's really good. Just don't pay attention to that right now, but look at that, and look at this corner. It's all coming together really well. Remember I said one cable at a time. Before you know it, you'll have it all done. Now this has apparently come out of it's not being tied in there anymore. Now there's not a whole lot I can do with this bundle. It's just kind of ugly, and I'm going to have to live with it that way. Unless I want to run the cables way down here instead of keeping the bundle up front. But this case has plenty of room for a bundle of cables. In other words, the distance that I've got from the panel is plenty for this little bundle. If it was going to be too fat and it was going to create an issue where the panel was going to have difficulty going on, I could bundle it down here where it's out of sight, out of mind, but that it does sort of get in the way when you need to work by plugging or unplugging anything into the power supply. So I'm trying to keep all of that in mind. I'm trying to think of everything in its own little compartment so that we don't have to disassemble 3 things to get to one thing. Although in some circumstances there's not much you can do This is going to require a little experimentation to figure out here, so bear with me as I try a couple of different ways of running these cables. It's just too big and bulky of a bunch of cables here that I can do much other than hope for the best. Just put a cable tie on it and see where I'm at. And I might destroy a couple cable ties in the process. I might have to tighten them, cut them, put a different one on. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about this though. Oh, see, I already screwed up. That is supposed to be underneath that cable tie I just tied. So the way you fix that is grab another cable tie, make sure everything's in the bundle that you want there, and we'll tighten that one down and then very carefully cut this one off. If I cut this one off first, then all the cables would be loose again. So just go ahead and utilize that to hold it all together for me. See, now again, I don't know. I could have gone up with this cable and included it, but that's a little too taut if I do that. That's not too bad. I wish I didn't have this extra slack right here. That's the only thing that's bothering me. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it again. We're going to put the next cable tie on, right below the one I just put on, which was right below the one I had on before that. Remember I said I might burn through a few of these in this process. And then I got to be really careful when I cut that off. It'd be super easy to go through one of those cables. I don't know. What do you think? I think that looks pretty good. Wish I could do more with this. I think that looks good. Now hopefully I didn't destroy the computer in the process and everything will be great. Rusty Nails contributed $5. He says, a suggestion for next time I would use shrink tubing on the loose connectors. It can also be used to bundle the cables. I'll tell you, I don't like to use shrink tubing because it's very difficult to cut it away. At least with a cable tie, you just one quick cut. With shrink tubing, you'll have to slice along the entire length of it, and it increases the odds of cutting into one of the cables. And even if you don't cut it in half, if you so much as strip away some of the insulation, that may be all it takes when you put the side panel back on, it grounds out. And now you're exchanging the ease of working on the system and the likelihood of damage in exchange for a prettier look for what is the back of the case that nobody's going to be looking at but a technical person anyway. So again, I'm trying to not only make it look good, but I'm also trying to make it easier to work on. Ideally, I'll be the next guy who works on it. If I have it my way, the customer will come back to me. I'm just sort of looking at this big power cable, wondering if we're going to be okay putting this panel on. Let's find out. Let's bring that down. And let me get the side panel put back on, which I have back here. So these BeQuiet side panels, they do have some sound insulation, sound dampening material right here, as you can see. You can see the thickness of it this way. And you'll see that the thumb screws are captured, so you don't have to worry about losing them. They stay attached to the panel, which is wonderful. I love that. Now we can set this down. And look at that, there's no resistance. Those little bundles I was worried about, no issues. That's freaking perfect. Look at this. Look how nice that looks. Now hopefully I can power it up and turn it on and it's still going to work. Let me grab the glass panel and the connectors. The screws that hold the glass panel on should be in this box. Yep, here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. There they are. Let me go grab that side panel. Watch out, boy. Glenn Davies has contributed $2. He says it would be cool if the cable ties were RGB. Oh, shoot me. All right, relax, guys. We're going to take the protection off. Ooh. Oh, looks like I got some dog drool on here. Let me clean that off with some Windex and a paper towel. And I'm leaving fingerprints on it. The joy of glass. This is tempered glass, which means it's very sturdy. And I still put a little extra protection around when I'm shipping any computer with a glass panel. This one is going locally, so we're gonna have no worries there. Tempered glass would be like the kind of glass shelves you have in a refrigerator. Probably be the most common place you've seen it. Looks pretty clean. Well, that's not going on that way, is it? Now these you don't want to use any tools on. You don't want to crack the glass. Or maybe you do. I don't know what you want to do. I don't want to crack the glass. Well, this is it. That's all there is to be done. All the operating system configuration is installed and optimized. We can plug in video. Again, we're using onboard video here. And we can plug in the network cable, because why not? And then I just need a keyboard and mouse, and we'll plug that in. And then I'm gonna borrow your screen. We're gonna power this thing on. First, I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna make the other screen smaller. So bear with me for a second. I'm gonna grab camera 2 and I'm gonna make it a little smaller. We'll put it maybe, let's say, right about there. Well, that covers it up pretty good though, doesn't it? Let's go, Let's go right there. That way you can see it light up and see the boot time and everything at once. Let's hit the power button. Here we go. And that system is just dead quiet. Love it. There's the desktop. I didn't even throw the trash out and it was already booted. Inside the motherboard box, right underneath the screen, as you can see, I've got all the documentation, the spare power supply cables, SATA cables, extra screws. Everything is in here, spare parts for the cooler. This will all go to the customer, and we'll just keep it all in the box. I always suggest to my customers that they put this away somewhere, because we are going to need it one day when there's a repair or an upgrade to be done. This is a top screen that can go at the top of the case. I'm not going to give this to the customer. This is just going to create confusion for them. They don't need it. It's got little magnets in the corner. It sticks with magnets. I'm not, like I said, I'm not giving that to the customer. They don't need it. They won't use it. That's our final build. That is a good looking build, and when you look at it straight on, if I have enough slack, which I don't, you can see it's a nice, you know, from this side, from the side I'm standing at, I just have a solid panel, and from this side you've got the glass. So if you have a computer like this in an office and you put it up against the wall and the wall's on the left side, you're going to basically cover all that up, making the whole thing pointless. So you are sort of limited on where you can place the tower if you want to showcase it, as we've done here. And like I say, the water cooling pipes, there's not much we can do for that. I suppose it would be possible, maybe, to grab a zip tie and pull them up so they're running over the top instead of across the middle. Maybe. I don't know until I try it. It might be doable, because that's kind of detracting, in my opinion. What do you think? What do you guys think? As I'm standing in front of it and blocking your view. I'll just stick right there. I'll be back here. DHR Street Speed says, OCD runs strong in you. I don't flip lights on and off 4 or 5 times. You know, I don't wash my hands every 30 minutes. Maybe every 45. I'm not that bad. Let's see. Viable Solution says, my son has epilepsy. I'm guessing RGB on his build would not be a good thing. Well, you can configure the RGB to stay one steady color. It doesn't have to flicker or change. You can even turn it off altogether. And you'll see the RGB is on the motherboard itself, as well as the water block, the RAM, and the 2 fans. And if we, let me try cutting the lights and see if that showcases that RGB a little better. Let's cut this light. We'll go completely dark. And then we'll zoom the camera in. And And you can see the RGB I'm referring to on the board right back there and down there on the heat shield here. On top of the RAM changing colors, the water block, and they're all changing the same colors at the same time. Thanks, Jimmy. Now, not only does that look good, watch how fast it is. If we restart the computer, let's see how long it takes to restart. Start, shut down. Boy, I wish I could read that. I think restart is the first one, isn't it? Let's see how long this takes. There's your power off. Here we go. I'd say that's pretty quick. So it can not just walk the walk, but it can talk the talk. All right, guys, and so there it is. That is the BeQuiet Pure Base 500 with window, showcasing the SilverStone PF240 liquid cooler, the G.Skill RGB Pro RAM, and we're using an ASRock Phantom Gaming 7 Z390 motherboard. First time I've used those components I've mentioned. Well, maybe not the RAM, but everything else is the first time on these components. And the power supply, let's not forget, it's hidden away, out of sight, out of mind. That's the StraightPower 11 from BeQuiet. And I want to officially thank BeQuiet for sending me the case and the power supply for evaluating, as well as the folks over at SilverStone for allowing me to evaluate the PF240 cooler. And I will be making another video utilizing the PF240 cooler to explain how to install it, because their documentation was not good at all, and it's very different from what I'm accustomed to. So I'm hoping if anybody else gets this cooler that my video will be helpful to them. That'll be utilized on the upcoming build, which is an AMD 3950X, which I have right back here in a box. That's going to be paired with the crucial MP600 PCIe 4 2 terabyte solid state NVMe drive. And that will go into BeQuiet's windowed Pure Base 600, which is a little bigger and should allow the orientation of the cooler to go up above if I want to do that. I kind of like the way it looks here. And that build is coming up next week. I got to put Mitch to work as my camera operator so we can make the best video possible for what's going to be an outstanding build. And this may be a really good build when it's all said and done for DHR Street Speed, if he likes the RGB look, because the only thing that'll be RGB, so the RAM will be Trident G.Skill Royal, which is that crystal RAM. It's a real pretty RAM. Did you guys see it? I've showed it to you, right? Let me grab it one more time. I'll show it to you one more time. They sell it to you like it's jewelry. It's the strangest way I've seen RAM packaged ever. So yeah, if you thought this build was killer, wait till you see what's coming. This, you know I mean business when I'm moving my Coke, is the SilverStone PF240 cooler. This is the MP600 2 terabyte PCIe 4.0 NVMe drive, which should give us about 5,000 megabytes per second. And this is the RAM. This is the G.Skill TridentZ Royal, which has a mirror-like finish on it and is ridiculous over the top at about $30, $40 more than other RAM that doesn't. It's a great excuse to add a little profit margin to your product, but I think you'll all agree it's very pretty. And that's what I'm looking for in RAM. Give me some pretty RAM. Hold on, I gotta open the box. It opens like a door. Look at this. Well, there's a Go Faster sticker that quickly fell out of the box. There's a microfiber cloth to clean fingerprints off of the RAM. And you can even see the camera in the reflection. Yeah. It's going to be over the top. Over the top. All right. So how many do you guys want? Taking orders. 15, 25? Put me to work. They're basically going to be two really big builds coming up. One is the Xenos computer, which I mentioned before, about 4,000 times over the last 4 years. That's been a project I've been trying to get put together for over 4 years now, and it's finally going to happen. But before that happens, we'll first do this AMD 3950 build. So if you can picture the 3950 CPU with that cooler, that storage, very fast storage, this RAM filling every bank. If we got 4 slots, we're filling them. And then finally, the windowed BeQuiet Pure Base 600, which is a little bigger than the 500 here. And we'll use a BeQuiet power supply, which I don't have the model number for yet. And that'll have Windows 10, of course. And that'll be that. That'll be the whole system. It should be an amazing system with all those cores and all that processing power and fantastic cooling and the RGB lighting and a really nice, well-built case with a good, sturdy power supply to keep it powerful and efficient and quiet. That's coming up next week. The Xenos build will be an Intel Core i9-9900KS. So we're at the top of the line on the consumer side with Intel and the top of the line on the consumer side with AMD. And I'm not pairing them off against each other. They're just simply, it's a showcase and a celebration of hardware diversity. Can't we all just get along? Samuel Ramos has contributed $9.99. Thank you, Samuel. AV3 says that RAM is fingerprint magnets, but how often do you touch it? I'm talking about the RAM. Stay focused. All right. Finally, the other thing I've got to finish up is that BeQuiet non-windowed version of the same case. And that, as I mentioned, will be available for sale, and it can be customized to whatever you need it to be. If you want more RAM, less RAM, more storage, faster storage, slower storage, a graphics card, whatever you want to do. Could be a gaming machine at the end of the day, could be a business machine, could be a little of both. That will be available for sale. I have to figure out what all the components cost, and that's what it's going to sell for. It's really that simple. You can go to Amazon, go to Newegg, add up the price of the components. That's what it's going for. Tomorrow, a build for William Bailey. William joined us in the chat room earlier. We're putting together a pretty nice system for Bill, and I'm going to start that in the afternoon tomorrow, and I will expect at some point to be interrupted by Martin, who's going to pick up the computer with the power supply we just replaced. So he'll hopefully pop in and say hello during the stream. And then the computer I built and finished up earlier today, the Blender build, I've got to do the cable management on that, and I got to find out if they want me to activate Windows, if they're providing a key. Once that one is buttoned up, that'll go to that customer. And then I've got 2 more systems after that, and then I expect to put the Xenos system together right after that. And then I'm working for putting a system together for Madi, and another gentleman, VC, just reached out to me, and I got to talk to him and figure out what we can build for him. So business is good, keep him busy. What motherboard am I going to use for the AMD build? So that's a good question. I was looking around different motherboards trying to find something that would be reliable and give me the features that I wanted for it. And I even asked for suggestions, and the reason I'm walking away is I'm looking for it. I've got it here in my office. And I really didn't get many suggestions. And so I did my own sort of snooping around. You know, I like Gigabyte, so I was looking primarily at Gigabyte's offerings. And what I came up with is this. This is the Gigabyte X570 Aorus Elite gaming motherboard. And it has the looks I like, you know, remembering that this is going to be a big glass window here, and I want everything to color match. The good thing about that RAM is being a mirror finish. It pretty much goes with any color of motherboard you've got. And ideally, I don't want a bright board, like I don't want it white or camouflage like Asus does some of their boards. I think even Gigabyte does that too. I want it black as possible so the RGB will really pop better on it. And so this will be the board that will go with the AMD build, the 3950X. I guess I can shut this thing down because it's really distracting me here. So let me shut this off. And then we'll turn off camera 2. That's fixed. Okay, so any final questions, or I'm finally going to say goodnight for the day. It's been a long day. What video card am I going to put in there? I'm going to put in a 2080 EVGA 2080 RTX. Glenn Davies wants to know, would Vegemite work well as a thermal compound and stop glaring at me? I'm sure it'll work better as a thermal compound than it works as food. Have you had Vegemite? It's disgusting. I don't recommend using Vegemite for thermal compound, nor do I recommend ingesting it. I think you're better off eating that desiccant. But that's just my opinion. And thank you for the contributions. Let me give a shout out to everybody who's contributed. And one more time, if you have any last questions for me, this is it. I will be back tomorrow afternoon with a new build, however. So again, thank you to Glenn Davies, Samuel Ramos, who contributed twice in a row there. Jesse Kirk contributed $5. He says, amazing work, Carey. Great live streams as always. Hey, thank you, Jesse. Glenn Davies contributed again. And Rusty Nail. Amadi Yoel, Glenn Davies a third time. Stealth Mode. Wallace Benaway says, hello from another 30-year IT veteran. Hey, Wallace. Hope you're going to stick around and join us in future streams, as well as hang out and participate in the chat. And look forward to seeing you in there. Iyer Wolfman, thank you for your contribution. And Randy Harris, Glenn Davies on a fourth time. Paul, 1961. Brendan Looney, Daniel Skinner, Hugh Wong, Chester Hughes, Boomhauer 100. And the first contribution that came in right after we started the stream today was Madi Yoel, of course. Guys, thank you so much for all of your support and kind words, and for everybody in blue for being blue, and for taking care of the attention seekers. You know, I appreciate you helping me handle that unnecessary distraction. Just take one last look in the chat, see if which 2080 am I using? So the 2080 Ti will be used in the Xenos build. The regular 2080 will be used in the AMD 3950X build. I can't tell you specifically which model it is because I'm not sure. It's about $800, so whatever that gets me, that's what I ordered. It's all based on budget, and availability is another issue. The Xenos doesn't have real good airflow, so I really needed to put, it was highly recommended to use a blower style graphics card, and for whatever reason the 2080 Ti's blower style are very hard to find. The blower style has one fan, and it's at the end of the card, and it pushes the air out through the front of the card on the back of the case versus having multiple fans that are just blowing air over. So I don't know what the deal is with the blower style, if it's just out of stock and they're coming back, or are they phased out? I don't know. But I found one that was ordered. I will see the 2080 should arrive tomorrow. And the 2080 Ti, I'm not sure when it's due to arrive, but it'll be here long before I'm ready for the Xenos build anyway. And yeah, you'll have to tune in to get the specific model number because I don't know what it is. I'd have to look at my order history and figure it out. I've ordered, in the last 3 days, I've ordered 45 or 50 parts, so I can't remember. Well, honestly, if I ordered one part, I probably still wouldn't remember it. It just sounds better. But it is true. We put a lot of orders in this week. We've got a lot of builds coming up. Zero Core, thank you for your kind words. And you know, it's my goal to turn everybody blue. And I can assure you, if the people in blue are timing you out because you're the batteries in the wireless microphone pack are 2 AA batteries, and it'll eat through a pair of those in about 7 or 8 hours. And so I've been streaming quite a while to go through a pair of batteries, and that's why I'm using rechargeables, because it would cost me an arm and a leg if I wasn't. But basically, what I was saying was my thanks to everybody in blue for keeping the trolls at bay. I don't know why anybody would come in here and be a troll. When everybody's so kind and friendly, it's so much more rewarding to establish friendships and to see familiar faces. Wouldn't you want to come back again and be welcomed? Because once you're banned, all you can do is be a viewer, a spectator. You cannot participate. Nobody's going to talk to you. Nobody knows you exist. You come in here and just be nice, and then you can look forward to coming in and establishing friendships with people. You'll see familiar names, and you'll get to feel like you know each other. And it's a much better feeling than just creating animosity, which is weird because it's short-lived. A friendship is much longer lasting, and it feels better for a longer period of time. But I appreciate everybody in blue for keeping the trolls at bay and keeping me from being distracted at that so I can focus on the job at hand. So thank you very much. And if you're not blue, I would love to turn you blue. It just happens in time. I start to recognize familiar names, to being kind and supportive in the chat room. That's all it takes. And of course, if people contribute financially, putting their money where their mouth is, that means a lot to me too, and I'll often turn people blue on that as well. So I would love to have a chat room with nothing but blue in it, and I hope one day to get there. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody for joining me and bearing with me through what is a long day of streaming. Time for me to hook up the battery charger. It's going to be working overnight. And I will see you all tomorrow with a brand new build. And William Bailey, if he's in the chat room or you see him tomorrow in the chat room, that's his computer we're going to start building tomorrow. So hopefully you all get some rest or go to work or, I don't know, do whatever you do. And you certainly got an overdose of Carey today. I'm sorry. Thanks for joining. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.